large dome at the very top that we mentioned earlier. About to be tipped over. It's a good.
And now for something really different. We're going to interview Joseph Costarella, the avid adventurer. Now, many of you have been asking some questions, and we've gone through all the questions and sort of accumulated them and picked out two of the most commonly asked questions. Actually, you aren't asking any questions. You're hardly ever chatting. Only a couple people chat on the channel, and no one's asking very many questions. So I'm making up these questions thinking that you might be interested in a couple things about the trip. What is it like driving an electric car around the country? Well, thank you, Joseph, for asking me that question. That is a very good question. So, what is it like driving an electric car? Well, there's kind of a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is it's really not a problem at all. The long answer is it's not exactly like driving a gas car. It's getting better all the time because Tesla superchargers are a pervasive system and they're getting better every day. I think every week there's maybe another 5 supercharger stations in America and maybe 10 in the world. I think we're approaching close to 1,800 stations in the United States, and a station may have 5 to 20 charging spots in it. I think there's something like 2,000 actual chargers in America right now. So there are more and more all the time, and you pretty much can drive around without worrying about it. But that's not 100% true. You do have to think about it. When you start out, let's say, I'm going to give an example. When I was in, where was I? I was in Colorado, in Denver, and I was going to go up to Sioux Falls. And so when you have a gas car, you don't even worry about it. You just get in your car and go. And I mean, gas cars aren't 100% without having to worry. Sometimes you see those signs that say last gas for the next 30 miles. So sometimes even in a gas car, you have to look at your gas gauge. If you get a sign like that, you have to fill up with gas. But pretty much you don't have to worry about it. You're going to find a gas station everywhere. Electric cars, that's not true yet. So let's say let's use that example where I'm in Denver, and I'll get in my car and I'll put Sioux Falls in as a destination. That's where I want to go. And the car picks the best route, and it looks at the amount of charge I have in the car, and if I'm going to need electricity along the way, it'll find some superchargers. And usually there's one route. Sometimes it'll pick a couple routes, and then I'll turn on, there's a button where you can turn on, it lights up all the superchargers in an area. So I have the route marked in blue, but then I also can turn on and see all the other superchargers in the area. I might see a different route that I want to go. So, I could then go a different way. So that's, and then in that case, I wanted to go to Spearfish, which was a different direction. And so I could see that there was a supercharger up in Spearfish, actually. So I knew I could go that way as well. And then I mapped from Spearfish to Sioux Falls, something I'd do I would do in a couple of days after I got to Spearfish to make sure I could get from Spearfish to Sioux Falls with a different highway, and then that'll show me all the superchargers along that route. So you do have to kind of plan ahead and look at where you want to go and see if there's going to be superchargers. But so far there have been plenty of superchargers in every direction that I've wanted to go. And so in that case, the easiest way to drive somewhere is I'm in Denver, I'm going to go to Spearfish, and I'm going to go right to a supercharger. And that's going to be at or close to my destination. And so you just drive there and you don't worry about having a low charge because you're going to charge it once you get to the destination. Now you tell the car when in the settings how much charge you're willing to live with. In my case, I think I put 10%, although I don't usually go that low. So 10% of 300 miles is 30 miles. So my car will take me somewhere all the way down to 30 miles. If you are uncomfortable with that, you could say 20%, and then of course depends on the range of your car, but in the case of a Model 3 that could be about 60 miles. So the car would make sure you had 60 miles. If not, it would send you to a supercharger along the way. I often go a little more than 10%. That's a little too tight even for me. I like at least 60, 20% minimum in my electric batteries when I get somewhere. So the simplest case is you go right to a destination, and you're, if your hotel or place you're going to stay is at the supercharger, that's great, because then you fill up and then you stay overnight. You could either fill up again in the morning or go to the next spot, and there'll probably be a supercharger along the route. The next situation, and this is what happened in Spearfish, is the hotel I was staying in was not at the supercharger. It was 30 miles away. So you go to the supercharger, fill up, and then the Spearfish Lodge was 30 miles up the canyon, and then it's 30 miles back. So you have to think about that when you go to Spearfish to charge after your drive from Denver. You fill up with enough charge so that you could go the 60 miles to the hotel and back at least, and have enough energy to charge again. So that's not hard to do, but you do have to think about it. And then the third situation might be if there isn't going to be a supercharger at your destination. Let's say I'm going to someone's house, and in that case I will go to a supercharger as close to their house as I can, and then you plan to just plug into a 110 outlet at least overnight, and you have to think about that and make sure you have enough to get you to the next supercharger the next time you're driving. All right, so that sounds pretty good. You haven't really had a problem. You do have to, sounds like you have to think about it a little bit sometimes, not completely a thoughtless process. Have you ever but not been able to go somewhere because of the lack of superchargers? Let's see. Well, when I was in Duluth, Minnesota, which is pretty far north, right at the bank of the Lake Superior, I thought about going further north up to some national parks, or there's an island up there. Can't remember the name of it, but there were no superchargers up in that area, and I wasn't really going to go there, but I couldn't have gone easily because there aren't any superchargers there. I'd have to go all the way into Canada, and I don't know if Canada was open. There are superchargers in Canada now, but that stretch between Duluth and Canada, there weren't really any superchargers. Now I could have researched destination chargers. I could have called ahead and planned to stop somewhere with a plug if I really wanted to go there. But that was the only time I really made a decision not to go a certain direction because of the lack of superchargers. So for the moment, there are some spots in rural, remote areas, but again, that could be changing over time. There probably will be more and more of those superchargers. So yes, there can be some areas, remote areas, where it's not convenient to go. Well, thank you, Joseph, for that explanation about the Tesla and the network. Have you noticed anything about the other charging networks for non-Teslas? So your question, Joseph, was what is it like driving non-Teslas and charging them on trips? Well, I don't have a non-Tesla, so I can't really speak to this from experience, but I just heard a podcast from the Now You Know channel. Zach and Jesse did a whole blog on just this question on the non-Tesla charging networks, and I'm just gonna take their word for it. I can't speak from experience or firsthand knowledge, but they said that the Tesla really has the only large, pervasive charging network in the world right now. Rivian is supposed to put one in that's a very large system, but they haven't started it yet. And the Electrify America network is the network that VW had to put in, and they were forced to do that because they, lied about their pollution controls, and as a punishment, they were fined $2 million or had to spend $2 million to put in these Electrify America charger stations. So their motivation was to satisfy a penalty, whereas Tesla's motivation for putting their network in was they knew ahead of time, this was before they even sold their first car, that they would need to put in charging stations so people could charge their car. I think the first station was in halfway between LA and San Francisco. They sold their first cars in the Bay Area and LA, and so drivers could commute between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and they started building them all around the country. They knew that they needed that system, and so that they're incentivized to satisfy their customers and to help their brand. That's the purpose of it. Whereas VW is not, that isn't their motivation. And there are some other networks, the Charge Point and some others I'm not aware of that you see around. I do see them around, not very often. Sometimes they're near Teslas. But so that's what I heard from Zach and Jesse. Number one, there aren't very many. There aren't many stations or, at a particular location there, where in Tesla you might have 5, 10, 15 different charging stations that could handle 15 cars. The Electrify America Charge Point, there may be only 1 or 2 chargers. They're level 2, which means it's not as fast as a supercharger. That means it's charging like at your house with a 220 outlet. It's going to take 8 hours to charge the car. I didn't realize that. So, like where a Tesla, you don't charge at 100%. You're charging 80% on a trip, and it might take 15 minutes to 30 minutes to charge your car. Whereas the other cars, so VWs and Volts and Leafs, are going to take, apparently it takes a couple hours to get, again, they're not charging 100%, but just enough charge to get to the next station. It might take 2 hours, 3 hours. They're also apparently expensive, maybe more expensive than gas. They're often not reliable, so you get there and they don't work, or some of them don't work, half of them don't work, and if there's only 2 and half don't work, that leaves 1, and if there's someone charging it and it takes them 2 hours, you basically can't use it. So apparently the experience for non-Tesla owners when they're not charging at home, if they're charging at home, no problem. But when they're traveling out on the road, they're reporting to Zach and Jesse that it's a very frustrating experience, and they say they're getting rid of their cars and getting Teslas. So again, I can't attest to that, but because since I have a Tesla, I haven't had any problems. Their stations are everywhere. They're almost always working. They're inexpensive. They're reliable. It hooks right up to your credit card, which you store at Tesla, so you don't even have to think about. You just plug it in, as I showed you before. That's the other problem with the non-Tesla systems, is it's hard to hook into them. You have to hold the card or your phone through the Bluetooth, and that often doesn't work, or it's very slow and takes a long time. So it sounds like there's a lot of problems with it, and I'm surprised because you'd think these other companies would have the same incentive as Tesla's to make it easier for their drivers, but apparently that's not the case. Well, thank you, Joseph, for that advertisement for Tesla. Yeah, see you later, my friends. And make sure to put down those questions. You can do it either on our group chat on the texting channel, or you can leave questions at the YouTube GOJOGO channel. So far, the only one really mainly leaving any comments is my son Co, and a couple of you do it. But that's the place, to interact with me, either there or the texting channel if you have any questions. So until next time, goodbye.